Today we're going to look at the nerve conduction study testing process for the median motor nerve. My name is Quinn Millington. I'm the owner and founder of EMG Solutions. By way of reference, you will remember that the median nerve, and I'm just going to start here at the elbow as it comes through the cubital fossa and then into the forearm, and it will branch. There's a deeper branch, the anterior interosseous, that will be dealt with in a different video. We're focused on the median motor that comes down into the hand, crossing into the hand through the carpal tunnel here at the wrist. The motor fibers largely supply an innervation to the thenar eminence as well as to the first and second lumbricals. And we're going to walk through this testing procedure with you. The first thing that I like to do in this case is I'll put an electrode right over the APB, and you'll notice that it's a little bit proximal and just a little bit lateral. This is where we usually find a really good response to this nerve. The reference electrode I put just distal to the knuckle here. This knuckle, this is the proximal phalanx of D1. So I place the reference electrode right down here. So the active electrode and then the reference electrode. And then on the back of the hand, we'll put the ground electrode. So let's see if we can get that on here right now. We're going to carefully turn her hand over just like that and see if we can get that electrode positioned. All right. And then we're going to put the electrodes on here for, again, this black one is going to be the active electrode. The red one will be the reference. Easy way to remember that. Red, reference. Now we're going to mark our positions where we will be doing this. The total distance is going to be 8 centimeters from our stimulation right here across the wrist. We would call this a distal motor latency, and it'll be 8 centimeters from here over to its recording position at the APB. But we also like to evaluate the conduction velocity across the wrist. We don't always do this, but I usually will do my setup in such a way that it's there if I want to use it. So I'm going to come over 3 centimeters and we'll put a mark there. Let's get our tape measure back up here again. There we go. All right. And then from there, I'll come back another 5 centimeters for a total of 8. And there it is right there. We've got those marked. The other thing that I'm going to do is come up here to the elbow. I come just proximal to the cubital fossa, and when you palpate, you'll find that there's a little space here, kind of a little septum, intermuscular space right there, and you can feel the fibers of the pronator, and then just proximal to that at the elbow, you'll find a really good spot where you can approximate the median nerve and stimulate it. It is possible, if we wanted to, we could come up a little higher and do another mark. You probably can't see it on the screen, but I came back another 10 centimeters so that we can just evaluate this segment as well. The reason that we do this with these different segments is it's so we can evaluate each segment independently. All right, and that'll be an important discussion that we'll probably tackle in a different video. So hand has been prepped, it's been warmed, we've stabilized the temperature. I've described the course of the median nerve very briefly, and then we've talked about the placement of the electrodes. Now we're going to get the stimulator, and you'll notice that we've got our cathode, this negative pole highlighted with a little green button right here. In this particular device we can switch, but we want the cathode on this end for this testing procedure, and you'll notice that it's going to be closest to our recording electrode. And so from right here, I'm just going to stimulate right here in the palm, and we'll just watch this on the screen to see what kind of, oh, we got a nice response, and I take the stimulus intensity up a little bit. It doesn't really get any bigger, so that's probably as good as we're going to get right there in the palm. We'll then come proximal, again, with the cathode distal, that's our negative pole, distal, and we'll stimulate right here at the wrist. One of the pitfalls is to fade a little bit toward this ulnar border, and that can give you some erroneous data if you begin to stimulate the ulnar instead of the median nerve. All right, so let's stimulate right here. Oh, there we go, nice response. And we'll take it up just a little bit. Oh, that's nice and clean, that looks good. So we'll store that one. All right, and then let's come up to the elbow. One more. I'm going to take up the stimulus intensity just a little bit. And once more, it doesn't change a lot. I think we've maximized that, and we'll save it. Now, the last step in this is for us to measure the distance from the cubital fossa up here down to the wrist. That's 22 centimeters. I'll put that in down here, 22, and it'll do a calculation for us. There we go. So now when you look at this, you can see that we've got an onset right there in the palm. Then we've got an onset right over here for the wrist and another one up here at the cubital fossa. Our reference table shows the data, and we can see from this data that the distal latency from the wrist across the palm should be less than 4 milliseconds, and in this case it's 3.6. So that part looks good. But in this case, when we look at the conduction velocity across the wrist, it is really borderline, really borderline. So we'll just kind of note that as a mental note in our heads. But the conduction velocity through the forearm looks really good, and the amplitudes are consistent. You'll see that there's really no degradation of the amplitude as we move up through the forearm. So those are good data points that we have collected now on the median nerve. So just for a quick reference, we evaluated the median nerve, cleaned and prepped the hand, placed our electrodes, one over the APB, the other one is a little bit distally. I usually put it right at the base of the proximal phalanx here on D1. And then we measured 3 centimeters to this stimulation point in the palm, then came back another 5 centimeters to the wrist. So this total distance here is now 8. Then we came up here, identified a stimulation point right at the elbow, and measured this distance. So we now have good data that tells us the length of time and the velocity for each of these segments. We did discover there's a little bit of a slowing of the conduction velocity across the wrist in this particular case. So there's a recap and a summary of what's done to test, to do a nerve conduction study of the median nerve. Thank you.